Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. It is Friday, January 26th, 2023. We finally reached the end of the week, and I am so looking forward to this conversation today because I'm going to be talking with someone who ran against one of the most extreme members of Congress, Lauren Boebert, and who lost his race by just slightly less than 500 votes, which is nothing in politics. And that person is Adam Frisch. Adam, it is so great to see you today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Victor. Hope you're doing well, and happy weekend to everybody coming up.
Yes. So there are so many places to begin, but I think for people who are outside the Colorado 3rd Congressional District, it's hard to imagine what Lauren Boebert is actually like. So I want to ask you, as someone who ran against her, and I presume who interacted with her several times throughout the campaign, what is she actually like?
I only met her once at a debate, once
Mhm.
at an event heading down to a state fair, which was the first time, and then when I called her up when I conceded the Friday after the election, and I'll just say that she's very on brand. I mean, I think
Mhm.
her public persona is who she is as a person, and that she's incredibly feisty. She's
Mhm.
incredibly frustrated, and she loves that bombastic, what my buddy in Congress calls Dean Phillips calls angertainment, and she's
Mhm.
very big on this angertainment industry, if you will, that has brought her a lot of fame and a lot of fortune.
Wow. So I want to ask you about the end result and a little bit more about kind of what allowed or I guess what allowed her to win that election. But she won by barely over 500 votes, and I'm wondering what you think changed from when she ran in 2020 versus 2022 in terms of just the margin and why she was able to only win by slightly over 500 votes.
Well, the district, Victor, is about R9, R10, if you will. So if you have,
Sure.
as I say, like a Republican cantaloupe running against a Democratic cantaloupe, it should be
Uh,
a 55-45 win. But she cost herself about 4 or 5 points just because of who she was. And she only won by 5%. So only about half of what she was supposed to win by in 2020.
hmm.
And that's what got me thinking that if a moderate Democrat, who I am, could get by the Democratic primary, I think I have the policies and the hustle and the personality to earn about 10% of her prior voters to win. And we got about 9.985% of them. We ended up having the closest race in the country,
Yeah. Yeah.
546 votes. We were supposed to lose by 45,000, and we lost by 546.
Wow.
I think a couple of things that resonated with people out there. One, the number one thing I said was people want the circus to stop in DC, and that resonated with liberals, moderates, and conservatives. And in this district, especially when you're represented by someone who's so extreme, they understand what that circus is, that angertainment. For 20 years, I've said, if there was a get stuff done party, I'd be in that party. And that, we have a lot of ranchers, a lot of farmers. It's a very rural district. And everyone's pragmatic out here. And it kind of has this libertarian, a kind libertarian streak of
Yeah.
just the UBU party, if you will. And the number one thing I pointed out as well was like she's focused on herself, not on the district. And that just hit
Hmm.
home.
Hmm.
And that's what resonated with a lot of people.
So do you think that the turnout was more of a high Democratic turnout or more of a low Republican turnout, and that's what caused this really close margin?
The turnout, we've just done some analysis. The turnout was fairly the same on both sides, if you will.
Hmm.
The Republican Party did incredibly poor out here in Colorado. The governor Polis had a landslide victory. He ran against a really weak opponent. But even Michael Bennett won by 15 points, and he ran against what a lot of people will consider to be a moderate, conservative, normal business guy in Joe O'Dea, and even Joe
Sure,
lost by
sure.
15 points. And so I think the Democrats and Republicans came out about the same. There were definitely some pockets of Democrats that didn't come out to vote, which we wish they did. But
Yeah.
that's all part of the process. And we're giving a thought about running again. Nothing definitive, but
Mhm.
we assume that there's going to be a bigger turnout on the Democratic side in 2024.
Yeah. So to me, it's still concerning how close the election was, and I think it gets into a broader question of what makes people in that district in Colorado vote for someone like Lauren Boebert, because it doesn't seem like you said, she's focused on herself. She doesn't stand for anything that would actually benefit the third district or the American people at large. What do you think made people vote for her all at the end?
Well, to give us a little credit here, Marjorie Taylor Greene got 75% of her vote in
That's true. Yeah.
2020.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's a couple of things going on. The Democratic brand is very damaged in a lot of rural
Hmm.
America. And I spend a lot
Hmm.
of time talking about this. And it's not so much the policies, but it's just the rhetoric that Fox News does a brilliant job of taking
Yeah.
some very liberal comments in more that might be more appropriate in Brooklyn or in central LA and getting out there. And it comes off as a very disparaging conversation in rural
Right.
America.
Right.
There's 3,000 counties in the country, 2,000 of them are rural. Bill Clinton won half of those rural counties in 96, Obama 25% of those rural counties. And Joe Biden, with respect, in 2020 won fewer than 10% of the rural counties.
Mm.
And so there is just a macro trend of the Republican Party having a close to a monopoly in rural America. And that's one of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
reasons that I ran to try to change that.
So, what do you think is the best way to reach that rural area? Because I totally agree with you. I think Democrats have a certain messaging that reach predominantly urban areas and a particular class and particular kind of status. But how do you reach back to those rural people who do tune into Fox News and Tucker Carlson and who receive just a completely different set of facts and information?
Yeah. Well, the reason we closed, a 45,000 vote gap to 550 was because a couple things. One, I got on the road and I did 24,000
Yeah.
miles in
Yeah.
my red pickup truck. And our district is one of the largest in the country. It's half the state of Colorado
Wow.
geographically. We have 27 counties. And I was home for about 4 days over the last 4 months of the campaign. I was just always on the
Wow.
road.
Wow.
So I just went to where I met people where they were physically.
Yep. Yep.
And even though I've spent time in New York City and I grew up in Minneapolis, I did spend my first 5 years on an Indian reservation. And I
Hmm.
do have a pretty good grasp of kind of what rural America is thinking. And I spent a lot of time focusing on that. And so I was sincere and authentic and being a good listener and agreeing with them that, kind of the Denver Democratic aspect or the most liberal parts of the Democratic Party is not really where Southern and Western Colorado are. The CD3 Colorado Third District, we have more in common with rural Florida and rural Idaho than we do in Denver or in LA or in Minneapolis, where I grew up.
That's really interesting. So I want to get into what we've seen from Lauren Boebert so far in Congress over the past few weeks. Knowing how close you were to winning that election, I bet that you're probably kicking yourself seeing what she's doing. But what do you make of everything that's happened so far from Lauren Boebert in these past few weeks?
Well, the majority of the time, it certainly doesn't seem like she's learned her lesson. She was definitely part of that angertainment circus
Yeah,
in that
yeah,
whole debacle of trying to get a speaker implemented at the House of Representatives to represent the United States of America. And I was at a Cattlemen's Association meeting last week, and I was at a couple other kind of ag conferences, and a bunch of self-identified Republicans came up to me and said how sorry they were that she's there and they were really
mm,
hoped, even those that voted for her, hoped that she was going to learn the lesson because the race was so close. And obviously,
yeah,
she has one gear and one speed, and she's not going to
right,
change. It's detrimental to her electorally staying safe. I mean, one of the reasons I got in this race a year and a half ago was I looked at all these extremists, Paul Gosar, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz,
yeah, yeah,
Marjorie Taylor Greene, all of them. They all had 65 to 75% wins. And Boebert only won 51% of the district and did not even win her home
mm,
county. So that's where I saw that she was uniquely vulnerable compared to all the rest of her extremist brethren. And that's what got
yeah,
me into this
yeah.
race. And she obviously hasn't learned her lesson from how close she came to. She was a worst performing Republican candidate out of the 435 people that ran.
Wow. Yeah, no, she definitely has not learned her lesson. It seems like a lot of Republicans, including Trump, have not learned their lesson. Have you talked to anyone in the third district about what they've seen so far? I mean, I can't imagine. She was, like you said, part of this Freedom Caucus and was pretty intent on blocking McCarthy at all costs. Obviously she voted president at the end, but she's now also been placed on several key committees, despite her insurrection claims and denying the 2020 election. Do Are people starting to realize what's happening right now with Lauren Boebert, and do you think there's a kind of a shift happening in the third district?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, even the last couple of weeks, I've been traveling around, still listening and learning from people on the Western Slope, Southern, and in Denver. And there's a lot of people that are really disappointed who didn't vote for her, who normally would have, the Republicans,
Yeah.
or people that did vote for her, hoping that she was going to change her message, and she hasn't. Any day that you're not talking about water, ag, ranching, and farming in CD3, you're not doing your job. And
Mhm.
while she personally is really happy to be on this oversight committee, it's going to be the ultimate circus committee
Yeah.
for Congress. And it's going to be talking about someone's laptop and other conspiracy theory stuff. And
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
any day you're not talking about water, ag, ranching, farming, you're not doing your constituents a service. And she's going to be very, very focused on that oversight committee, which is just going to spin out of control and
Yeah.
go completely off message for what farmers and ranchers want to see happen in western and southern Colorado.
Absolutely. So I want to look ahead a bit to 2024 because the one thing about politics is that elections never stop. I remember after the Georgia election, people are already talking about 2024, and I'm like, let's take a break. But
Yeah.
now that we have a new Congress, I want to ask you about 2024. I think it's a very winnable district for Democrats after what happened in 2022, and I would presume that you agree. What are your thoughts, and what do you think needs to happen between now and Election Day in 2024 to make sure that we can kick Lauren Boebert out of office?
Yeah. Well, I think I think our message resonated. I mean, I think I was the right person at the right time with the right message, and
Mhm.
we're obviously giving serious thought to bringing that whole trifecta to the next cycle. We're still having conversations with the team and the family and watching the lay of the land and everything. But again, this is a district that is 25% D, 31R, and 43 unaffiliated, which I was for
Mm.
20 years.
Mhm.
So it requires, just the mathematically, it requires a moderate Democrat that can earn some votes of some
Right.
non-Democratic voters. And we proved that we got 99.85% of the way there last time. And that certainly gives us some credence to do it. But again, it's about working really hard and being an authentic
Mhm.
person, an authentic campaigner, and ranchers and farmers more than anyone see through the BS of a lot of
Yeah.
traditional
Yeah.
politicians. And if there was a traditional Republican in there, I would not be running. There's no way to defeat that, he or she, and I just wouldn't have that much personal angst to get up and really do something. But she is not in a class by herself, but she is in that group of a handful of a dozen to 20 truly extremists that are part of that angertainment industry. And she's not focused on the job of representing her people.
Yeah, I mean, I think I speak for everyone listening and watching that we hope that you run for office in 2024. Like you said, I think that you were the right person at the right time at the right place, and then you will be again in 2024. Is there any time we can expect that announcement, or is it still kind
Well,
of up in the
it's
air?
still early. As I said, I think,
Right, right.
there's I'm still trying to lose some of the weight I put on from my barbecue tour and bakery tour and beer
Yeah,
tour, and trying to enjoy myself a little bit and kind of still kind of reconnect with the family.
yeah,
We were on the
yeah,
road so much with my son,
absolutely.
but if we do go, I could see us going, sometime sooner rather than later,
Hmm.
because it is going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah.
But we definitely have a lot of momentum, and whoever the Democratic candidate is going to have to be a great listener and work very, very hard. And I have a proven track record that I can do that.
Absolutely. Well, Adam Frisch, thank you so much for all that you do, and we will be looking forward to following your next steps. And please let us know and keep us updated because it's exciting, and we definitely need to kick Lauren Boebert out of Congress. So thanks so much for being here with us and joining me today.
That's great, Victor. Have a great day and best off to all your listeners.
Thanks so much. Have a good one. So many valuable lessons, I think, from what Adam just said. It's so important for Democrats, especially all across the country, but especially in rural areas where we traditionally don't really compete well against Republicans, to meet people where they are. That's something that organizers are often told on campaigns, that you have to meet people where they are. You have to be authentic. You have to really go out there and earn the votes. You can't expect that you just go to the main population centers and you can earn all the votes. I think it's really important and incumbent on all people running for office to really go out there and meet voters where they are. So, I think that Lauren Boebert is one of the most extreme members of Congress. She has a proven track record of that. And Adam Frisch, as hopefully you all saw, is, I think, really well positioned to go up against her in 2024 again and hopefully beat her this time because it was a close election, the closest in the country. And, I think the urgency of kicking people out like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert couldn't be higher. So, let's all keep our eyes on that race. There are some couple of updates I want to just get to right before we close out the weekend. The first is right before we went live this morning, President Biden confirmed that he will be nominating Jeff Zients as his chief of staff. Obviously, Ron Klain is his current one, and he is expected to step down after the State of the Union address. And so Jeff Zients is a great replacement. I think Ron Klain was the person who really helped steer the ship for the first 2 years. He's someone with great experience, tremendous talent, and who just works really hard. And I think Jeff Zients is a great replacement for this next step of the administration. He's someone who led the COVID response, who really knows how to work government. And I saw this really interesting tweet from Jen Psaki saying, is Jeff Zients the most political? No. But that's why we have people like Anita Dunn and also Jen O'Malley Dillon, who are both kind of from the campaign and who have that political experience. Jeff Zients is the one who just knows government and knows how to get things done without that political approach. And so I think Jeff Zients is a great tap for President Biden, and hopefully will make these next 2 years a great one. The next one I have for you is Hakeem Jeffries yesterday released the committee assignments for new members of Congress. And so for me, I was particularly excited to see the Oversight Committee, which will be filled with a guest that we actually, two guests that we've had on before. Maxwell Frost, who is the first Gen Z member of Congress, as well as Summer Lee, who is this new member of Congress who's on fire. Both of them are great additions. Also on the committee are Dan Goldman. And so Dan Goldman, Maxwell Frost, Summer Lee, and a bunch of other great new freshman representatives will be on the Oversight Committee, which is, again, that committee that will be looking into the investigations into Joe Biden, Democrats, these really baseless investigations. And so to have people like Maxwell Frost, the Gen Zer, to have people like Dan Goldman, the former impeachment prosecutor for the Democrats in the House for the first impeachment of Donald Trump, I think is a very, very great move by Hakeem Jeffries and will be essential in pushing back against those Republican lies. And so we should all be looking forward to that. And I think Republicans should be scared to have people like them on the committee to push back. So that is great news. And yesterday, one other piece of news is that Peter Navarro, who, as you may know, was involved in the January 6th insurrection as basically the chief plotter of this fake elector scheme, is looking to be disbarred from the California Bar Association. And so that means that he wouldn't be able to practice law anymore. And I think that's great news for democracy, for the rule of law, for justice and accountability, because you have someone like Peter Navarro and a bunch of other January 6th lawyers who I hope will also get disbarred. I think we have to face the consequences of what they, spewed in 2020, and hopefully they'll all be disbarred in the months to come. So that's all the news I have for you today. We'll be keeping an eye out again over the weekend, and I'll be back next week every weekday, Monday through Friday. We'll be having on great guests throughout the week, so you don't want to miss that. We'll be back every day at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on youtube.com/Politicon. You're not going to want to miss it. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And I will see you all next week. Have a great rest of your weekend.